Superchargers versus turbochargers. Today we're going to tear down each one to see what's inside, how it works, and which one is actually better. Taking a look at how a supercharger is set up on this engine, we've got our air intake that's going to bring in fresh air that's filtered out from the air filter. There's a bypass that goes to a throttle body over there. Then it looks like the air comes back through over here to another throttle body looking thing, and then to this air intake plenum at the top of the engine. First thing we're going to do is remove this hose here. Then I'll remove this bypass here to 12. Get this piece off here. Now I can peel off this insulation and we can see the supercharger underneath. 4 14mm bolts. Let's unhook this belt. Go. 2 more bolts in this bracket. When you pull this supercharger, you have some insulation padding, and that's for noise. You don't really want a hybrid winding up like a real supercharged engine, do you? Now what's left here is a relatively normal looking air intake. Even though this throttle body is so tiny, it's got 2 coolant hoses going to it. So let's see if we can get this cooling system off. It's a bunch of tents. So let's take a quick look at how these two systems work. We have our supercharger over here where air is going to come in. We have 2 rotors. Now there's 3 different types of superchargers. We've got a roots type, then we've got our twin screw type, which is the one we have here, and then there's a centrifugal type, which kind of looks like a turbocharger. The roots type tends to compress the air on the outside body, whereas the screw type tends to compress it on the inside and then throw it down here. Compressed air is going to warm up, so we're going to pass that through an intercooler here. That is going to then pass through the throttle body and then go out into the intake plenum to feed the engine. Now the engine's output of the crankshaft through a belt is responsible for turning that supercharger. There's no clutch here to disengage it, so it's always compressing air. However, there is a bypass valve here to short circuit it, and that takes air straight into the intercooler. Here we've got a 2-liter turbocharged Genesis G70 engine. Now we all know Hyundai engines suck, and that's why it's on my engine stand. Now the turbocharger hangs out on the side of the engine where it's going to draw exhaust gases from the manifold down into the turbine. That turbine is going to spin up the compressor wheel where it's going to draw in fresh air from the air intake filter. Now that air is going to get compressed and sent out this way to an intake cooler at the front of the vehicle. Now that intercooler could be an air-to-air or an air-to-water intercooler, which is then going to send boosted air through ducting down to the intake plenum here at the throttle body, and then that throttle body is going to control how much of that boosted air goes into the intake plenum to get burned. Now that turbocharger's got an oil feed coming from the engine, and it's also got a coolant feed coming from the water pump, and down below here you'll see your oil drain back as well as your coolant drain back at the bottom. Taking a look at our turbocharger setup here, we've got exhaust gases that are going to be coming out of the engine. That rush of air can then turn this turbine over here, which in turn can turn the compressor wheel. Fresh air is going to enter into here and get compressed, and because it warms up, it's going to be sent to an intercooler. That cool air is then going to be ducted all the way to the back in the engine. Here we've got our intake plenum, where it's then going to send boosted air into the engine. Now the turbochargers get hot, so we do have hookups for a coolant and oil to feed it. Now just like the supercharger, there's also a bypass valve in here, so you can turn the turbine off and just send the exhaust straight out the catalytic converter. So let's go tear down the supercharger. So here we've got the supercharger setup. We've got filtered air, which is going to enter into here. This is the pulley that's going to turn from the belt on the engine. That's going to turn the rotors inside of here, which in turn is going to compress air and push it to the outlet over here. There's also this bypass over here with a throttle body looking valve that can bypass air if you don't want boost. This charge pipe here is going to then take boosted air, there's a mass airflow sensor, and send it to the throttle body located over here on the intake. Now the intake plenum looks normal from this side, but when I flip it over here, you'll see we got 2 coolant lines and an intercooler inside of it. Without further ado, let's start taking apart this supercharger. Now you notice there's no external oil lines coming to this because it's all self-contained. There is a torsion spring inside of here. This is an Eaton supercharger, FYI. My best guess on this torsional spring is that if there's a bind inside of the supercharger, it kind of has that springy action and doesn't lock up the engine right away. Now one of the easiest upgrades to make the supercharger turn faster is to make this pulley smaller, or you can make the crank pulley larger if you want. Inside of here we've got 2 opposing gears, and that's what's going to power the rotors. They have to be clocked correctly, otherwise the rotors are going to hit each other. I'm going to remove the 12s on the bottom. Alright, so here we've got the bottom part with the bypass. This is the bypass valve. Here we go. Now this is the bypass throttle body. 2 things you'll notice: there's no coolant going to this throttle body like there is on the main one. It is drive-by-wire, and it's normally open. Usually throttle bodies are normally closed. It's also pretty clean. That's because the PCV doesn't vent into this side. So what has to happen is this throttle body has to close, then boosted air will be forced through the supercharger and then into our charge air pipe. Not all the time do you need boosted air, and that's why they put this in fail-safe mode, so you can at least get the engine running. Alright, let's take off the wrist. Now actually, if you notice, the inlet plate only allows the air to go over this half, which corresponds to the bottom half over here. Taking a look at the air path in here, we've got air that's going to enter from the top. Now this appears to be a twin screw style supercharger. It's going to then compress that air and send it out through the bottom over here. So let's take this apart. Alright, here it goes. Cool. Look at that. This thing smells like, you know when you open a can of petroleum jelly or crayons or something after a long time and it has that oily smell? Now the oil is contained within these gears here. You don't need oil in between the rotors. If you look in there, you'll see there's actually a slight clearance, and that's where the air gets pumped in. You wouldn't want oil in your engine. So here we've got a supercharger. Now this one is a twin screw design as opposed to a root style supercharger. Now this one has the pulley on the side here, which is going to drive in the clockwise direction with the engine, which means from the top here it's going to be counterclockwise. Now if you look at the housing here, air is going to start from the top here and it's going to make its way around this way. Remember, the housing is around here, and as it comes up to about this point here, it's going to get stuck between these two teeth and squished all its way down to this side where we have the outlet over here on this side. And this, along with the engine RPM, is how you control how much air enters the intake plenum before the throttle body. Alright, so here's the intake and the throttle body. Let's take this off. This is a very standard looking throttle body. Actually doesn't have too much stink on it. This is ultimately what controls how much air goes in the engine. When you add fuel, then you get power. Okay, here's something interesting. This is our vacuum switching valve for our evap system to vent air from the gasoline tank. Now this is now boosted air because it's going in past the throttle body. If that air gets a little too high pressure, is there a chance it could go back? Or is this like a flowback valve or something? Here we've got a manifold absolute pressure sensor. That's in addition to the flow sensor we had earlier. And then over here we've got a piece that's going to vent our positive crankcase ventilation into each one of these runners. This intake also has a motor here that's going to control these flaps for tumble flow control. Then we come to the intercooler part. Now this has its own coolant circuit with its own radiator cap. Let's go ahead and remove this intercooler with these crusty 10 mils. What does that do? Ooh, got a little radiator in there. It looks kind of burnt up. Smells like gasoline. I don't know, my nose is really working today. Here we've got a rubber strip, and that's probably to seal off air against the top. I wonder if I could use this in my room at nighttime to warm up. Now this is all it comprises for the cooling system on this intercooler. Now in a turbocharged setup you might have something very similar, but the intercooler would definitely be a lot larger and typically in front of the vehicle, and then you'd have to bring ducting all the way back to the intake. This one you can see is very compact. It sits right in the intake plenum, and that's just a result of the supercharger not warming up the air as much as an exhaust powered turbocharger will. Honestly, this thing reminds me of a heater core. Well, there's not much to see else back there. So let's go take a look inside a turbocharger. Taking a look at this turbocharger, this one's out of a BMW N20 engine from an X3. You'll see the first part of it is really the manifold. Most vehicles now built the manifold into the head. It's basically a collector to collect all of the exhaust pulses and put it into this turbine housing. We've also got connections here for the oil in and out, as well as the coolant in and out, because it has to lubricate and cool the turbine shaft in there. Now on the exhaust side, you'll see we've got this flap here, which is our wastegate. We've got our turbo wheel, which is very, very tiny compared to a supercharger, and that's spinning at millions of RPM. Now on the inlet side, there's less fins on the wheel. However, air goes in through the center and then comes through the outside on this. After that, it's got to go to an intercooler before it gets piped to the intake. Meanwhile, the catalytic converter hooks right up after the turbocharger for the exhaust. Let's see if I can slightly take this thing apart. Got it apart here. Now this thing's got a little bit of play in it. It should not have any play at all, because then the turbine is going to touch the housing. So I can connect this gun and spin the wheel. Barely feel any pressure here. So there's a snap ring here, and you guys all know how I love snap rings. Alright, if I just pull this apart here, you can see the basis of our turbocharger. So the airflow through a turbocharger is a little bit different. We've got exhaust gases that are going to come down and spin up this turbine wheel really fast, and they're going to exit out through the middle. Meanwhile, the compressor side over here is going to bring air in through the middle, and then it's going to flick it to the outside of the volute and exit out that way. I can actually remove this little wheel here, and there's another snap ring in there. And will you look at that, I actually got the snap ring out the proper way this time. Never seen a triangle style nut on the end of this one. Okay, that wasn't really a nut, but I could just take off this whole shaft right now. Pop off this portion of the seal here. So here's a look inside the turbocharger. Now we've got this turbine wheel that's spinning at thousands of RPM, and it needs lubrication at its bearing surface over here. And that's where we get the oil, which is pumped in and out through these holes on the side of the housing. Now that oil is going to provide a nice thin film, but when that oil seal starts to break down, you're going to have oil being dumped into the exhaust and lots of smoke coming out the exhaust. Moreover, if it breaks down on the intake side of this bushing over here, then you're going to have oil dumped into your engine, which is in turn going to come through the turbo and ruin your catalytic converter, not to mention make your engine run really bad. So the risks are definitely there with oil and coolant running inside of this little piece. Now the coolant goes in and out through these holes over here, and they form a little jacket that goes all the way around. Now our power increase by adding a supercharger before and after is pretty much instantaneous with a supercharged engine and very consistent throughout the RPM band. Whereas with a turbocharged engine, you're pretty much depending on that naturally aspirated engine for the first part until that turbine builds up and you get exhaust gases flowing, and then you see a nice increase in power and peak at the higher RPM. Now you can tune this RPM peak to become a little bit lower like in a turbo diesel engine, but it really depends on the application and what size of turbo you want to use. Now when it comes to the advantages and disadvantages of our supercharged versus turbocharged setup, the biggest selling point for superchargers is that there's no lag. As soon as you put your foot down, it just goes because it's not dependent on exhaust gases. It's very predictable and very linear because you don't have to wait for that peak boost, which is why it's great for drag racing cars like the Hellcat, because you have that instantaneous power to do drag races. Now in terms of packaging, superchargers are a bit more compact because they typically sit on top of the engine, so as long as you got space on top of the hood and a pulley wheel to go off, you can just bolt up a setup pretty easily. It's also less complicated because you don't have to run coolant, oil pipes, and charge pipes all over the place. And because the air is not running next to the exhaust, they typically have low inlet temperatures. You also don't need to lubricate them as they're kind of self-lubricated. Conversely, if you look at the advantages of the turbo, it uses free exhaust energy. It's not drawing from the engine, and that's because the engine is basically an air pump and it's going to push that air out regardless. So why not use that to spin up a little wheel so we can get some more boost? As a result, that makes the turbocharger more efficient, and that's why a lot of manufacturers like Hyundai and Mazda and Nissan and even Ford are moving towards turbocharging engines. That also allows manufacturers to downsize their engines but get a lot more power back by using the turbocharger. As a result, you're saving a lot of weight because you're not lugging around a lot of reciprocating mass by using a smaller engine. You've also got less emissions because of that smaller engine. Now speaking of efficiency, we've also got the growth of hybrid turbos such as Toyota vehicles, and that's great because you can use that electric motor in the hybrid part to give you that initial boost until the turbocharger spools up to give you the rest of the power, so you got a decent amount of acceleration. Heck, why not take the hybrid motor and just attach it straight to the turbocharger or the supercharger? And at that point you can just get power whenever you want at the touch of a button. You don't have to depend on exhaust gases or engine RPM in order to build boost. By far the major disadvantage of superchargers is that it takes power from the engine to make that power. Now it does make that power back, but it does take like 20% of the power, which is a pretty decent amount. Now in this design, it's also connected all the time to the serpentine belt. If there was a disconnect like an AC compressor, I think it would work a lot better. Now as turbochargers tend to build more and more power at higher RPM, you've got a very flat line with a supercharger, and that might not be desirable in a high-speed race car, and that's why the Porsche 911 Turbo is a turbo. Now even for your everyday cars, coolant, oil, and cooling is very important for a turbocharged engine, and that's why it takes a huge toll on your engine and its fluids, so make sure you keep up on maintenance. Now if your turbo is small enough, it can technically create an exhaust restriction and some back pressure. Remember, your engine wants to breathe as it's basically an air pump. Finally, take a look at the sheer complexity of this turbocharged setup. We do have a lot of ducting, a lot of extra pipes and fluids that have to go in here, and that kind of lends to the detriment of the long-term reliability of these turbocharged supercharged engine. In my opinion, I think the supercharged engine is a lot more simpler. It doesn't depend too much on the engine's fluid or a lot of ducting, and it's going to last a lot longer. However, naturally aspirated engines are going to outlast all of this, and hybrid engines even more so because they're not even on half the time. And that's a look inside of a turbocharger, which is so small, and a supercharger, which is a lot bigger. I'm going to probably keep this around and have a lot of fun with it, probably squeezing my fingers. Now I want you to tell me in the comment section down below which one you think is a lot more reliable and which one you would prefer to have on your car, turbocharger or supercharger, and subscribe for more videos.